Welcome to the podcast From Coffee to Cases, the show for small law firm attorneys who want to stop begging for leads and start building a business that runs on referrals and real relationships.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast From Coffee to Cases with Delisi Friday. Delisi is the founder of First Call Friday, where she helps lawyers turn casual connections into consistent referral relationships through simple, intentional systems. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we're talking about what happens after the coffee meeting ends, because the real opportunity isn't the handshake, it's the follow-up. If you've ever had a great conversation that never turned into a case, this episode is for you. Hello, Delisi. It's great to see you again.
Hi, how are you?
So good. Let's have coffee, shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
So why do so many lawyers waste a good meeting with a new contact by never following up?
Honestly, it sounds really simple, but the answer is they just forget. Honestly, that's what they do. They just forget and they get busy. Lawyers are busy doing so many different things: legal writing, hearings, mediations, depositions, meeting with clients, making phone. They are so busy. And the truth is, it's not always because they don't want to do it, it's simply because they forget.
Well, that's fairly simple. So, what's your advice to help lawyers not make that mistake of forgetting to follow up?
My advice to not forget to follow up is to use your calendar. So, one of the things that I like to train my clients on is, let's say that you're going to go to some kind of networking event or a happy hour, you're going to meet with someone and you want to make sure you don't forget to follow up. A simple rule of thumb is to say, every time I calendar a networking or event, I'm going to also calendar the follow up. And that's key. Next business day is always a great kind of like time frame to follow up. And so, what I'll say is, okay, if you go to a happy hour or an event on Friday, then Monday morning, just schedule like 15 minutes in your calendar, 15-minute little time block that says, reminder, follow up with the connections you made at this event. And if you use your calendar to remind you to take that action, it's going to be very helpful because a lot of lawyers live by their calendar. You've got deadlines, it's on the calendar. You got a hearing, it's on the calendar. You got a deposition, it's on the calendar. They live by their calendar. So let's not make this harder. Let's just make it easier and use what you're already doing. You're already using your calendar. So let's go in your calendar. And every time you have a networking event, use your calendar to remind you to do the follow up. And that's a simple way to do it. The other thing that I would add to make sure you don't forget the follow up is open up your notes tab on your cell phone. And before you drive away from that event, just sit in your car for a little bit, open up your phone notes tab and say, here are the people that I met, and here's some notes that I want to use when I follow up with that person. Because the other part is sometimes lawyers will say, yes, I forgot, but also I completely forgot about our conversation. That was so long ago. I forgot the things that me and Leanne talked about. And I'll say, okay, let's make it a habit then. When you're done with that event, before you leave the parking lot, write some notes down so you remember who you met and what you talked about.
So, this has been coming up in my world lately. Digital business card, paper business card. I recently got my own paper card for the first time in 6 years. And I love it because I can write notes on it. And it's like it reminds me, it seems to pop up all by itself on my desk once in a while. But what's your opinion?
Honestly, I think it kind of depends on what the attorney likes. I still love a good printed business card. My business card actually has a QR code so someone can take an action if they want to connect with me on LinkedIn. My QR code takes them there. And so I love a good like physical card to hand to people. The example you gave where you like to write on business cards, I love that. I used to do that too. The only challenge there is there are so many different finishes with business cards. So if someone gets like the really nice high gloss finish, you're going to write and then it's going to smear. And I always hate it when it smears. But I was actually at a networking event last night with some lawyers and I watched them hit their iPhones together and the iPhone shared the contact through an app. And for them, that's what worked. And I really liked that too. So honestly, I think it really just depends on what a lawyer feels comfortable with and what they want to do. Um, I also have you ever seen those business cards that are like a metal kind of business card and they place it on top of someone's cell phone and then their contact information is shared through like a metal card like that? Have you ever seen one
Yep,
of those?
absolutely.
Okay. I also like those too because then you're not reliant on the other person knowing how to save the contact when you hit your cell phones together. Um, so I think again, as the lawyers often say, it depends, and I think it depends on what someone feels comfortable with, honestly.
I love that. It depends.
Yeah.
And I know you're a LinkedIn fan. I have many people in networking situations just say, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn right on the
Yeah.
same spot. Any pros or cons or best practices since you love LinkedIn?
I will talk to someone in conversation and ask them if they're on LinkedIn. And so if someone says they are and that they post and they use it, then I'll connect with them right then and there on LinkedIn and I'll pull it up on my phone and say, "Hey, is this you?" and make sure we're connecting there. And I will do that only if the other person doesn't have a business card or they don't have that metal card that I just said because I don't like to be the kind of person who takes my cell phone out and then I'm interacting with my cell phone instead of interacting with the person right in front of my face. And so I will do it if they're like, "No, I don't have a business card on me." And then I'll say, "Oh, okay. Well, are you on LinkedIn? Can we connect on LinkedIn?" If they say yes, then I'll be like, "Let me find you and connect with you in that moment." And that's when I'll do that. But I don't recommend it all the time because what I start to see is people are then playing on their phones and they're kind of taking away that beautiful moment where you're connecting with someone in person. And I think those moments are still really important and special.
Extraordinarily wise advice. Well, let's go back to talking more about follow up. So, how do you usually follow up first? Through email, handwritten note, LinkedIn DM, phone call, or a text? What do you think?
Yes, I think, again, I'm going to say it a lot on this one. It depends. And it really just depends on the interaction. So, a moment ago when I answered your question, how to make sure you're following up, I gave the example write notes in your iPhone or in your Android. Put down the notes of who you met and something you talked about when you met with them. So the follow up can include something that tells a person you're paying attention. So, what I recommend is looking at your notes and saying, okay, when I met with Maria, um, she and I talked about being on LinkedIn. So when I go home or the next day, I'm going to go on my LinkedIn and I'm going to connect with those connections. And what I will do is send a connection request on LinkedIn to Maria and say, "Hey, Maria, it was great meeting you last night. I'm excited to be connected here on LinkedIn." So there's an example of how I might use LinkedIn if we talked about it. I will also connect with that person on LinkedIn if they're a name that I wrote down and I want to stay connected. I use LinkedIn every single day. And so I recommend it to my clients because it's a great way to stay connected. And there are a lot of lawyers on LinkedIn. And I think that's a great place to start. The text message, I have an example from last night. So last night I went to a happy hour with Bob Simon and his team from the podcast Bourbon of Proof. And at the end of the night, Bob and I were on a chat with his marketing guru, Brando, and we were on a group chat. And so what I did was I responded within that group text message. And it was appropriate for that situation because we had put each other on a group text message because we said, let's stay connected in this group text message. So it was in that conversation that I knew how to follow up because we had discussed how to follow up. Um, the phone call also comes into play if someone brought it up. So if we were talking and you said, hey, Delisi, I would really love to stay connected. Here's my card. Why don't you give me a call tomorrow and let's figure out when we can meet up for lunch and discuss this case that we discussed tonight? Because it's not a place for us to discuss this right now. And that's where, if we discuss me making a phone call and planning a time to meet up, I might do it then. Um, the other one that I really love is the handwritten note. I love handwritten notes. I have my own like personal stationery that has my name on it, but I also love to use the company handwritten. And so I will send a handwritten note if I decide I don't want to do an email because it stands out, and it's really just based on preference. So I might send an email if we exchanged business cards and I have your email and I'm like, hey, Leanne, it was great to meet you last night. Um, just wanted to stay connected. Here's my email. Or I might decide I want to do a handwritten note and say, hey, Leanne, it was great to be connected. I look forward to our future conversations or something like that in a handwritten note. And each of those different follow ups really just depends on what I feel comfortable with, who I was interacting with, and also what was discussed and feels appropriate as a next step. It's almost like you're making this decision based on your feelings and your gut and what feels like a natural next step.
I know on LinkedIn, sometimes connections can start to feel a little like a sales pitch, and it's probably not just LinkedIn. How do you keep that follow up from feeling that way?
I love that you gave the LinkedIn example because whenever I talk about how much I love LinkedIn, lawyers will be like, I hate LinkedIn. I just get pitched all the time with my connection requests and messages to buy something. So, first of all, don't do that. I call it a pitch slap, where you're connecting with someone and the first message you get is, "Hey, thanks for connecting. Let me tell you about this thing so I can sell you this thing." I hate when that happens and I don't like it. So, whenever I suggest follow up with someone, I do not suggest selling anything. I don't suggest following up and saying, it was so great to meet you, Michael. Just a friendly reminder, I do criminal defense law if you know someone who ever needs my help. No, no, that it it doesn't make me inclined to want to stay in touch with you if that's your follow up. You want it to feel personal. You want it to show that you were paying attention to the conversation that was happening. So here's an example I like to give. When you go in your car and you write those notes that I talked about in your phone app, use a line from those phone notes to show that you were paying attention. Hey, Will, it was great talking with you last night. I really loved hearing about your recent jury verdict in Webb County. Congratulations again. I would love to stay connected with you and look forward to our next meeting. That tells him that I was paying attention to his recent jury verdict in Webb County, and I was listening to what he was saying and paying attention. A lot of times people will just follow up and say, hey, it was great meeting you. But if you can just take a moment to think about something that person said and add a line from that conversation to show you were paying attention, then the recipient knows you were paying attention. And you stand out more than the, hey, it was great meeting you last night. Let's keep in touch. No, be thoughtful about it. Say something to let them know you were paying attention. And that's how you make it more genuine. That's how you turn it from a sales pitch follow up to creating a real connection with someone.
And if you don't remember that little nugget, another line I see in connecting is, I'd love to know more about you. Are there pros and cons to that line?
No, I love that line. Because honestly, sometimes when you're meeting with someone, honestly, the other person might not share a whole lot. Some people feel really uncomfortable with networking and they don't spill a lot. They're very protective of their personal information and they don't want to share things like that. Or um, they I know a lot of lawyers who are introverts and they're just not going to share that stuff in a setting like that because getting them to go to that happy hour was already a big leap. And so I love that line because then you can say, "Hey, Heidi, it was great talking with you yesterday. I would love to learn more about you and stay connected." And so it's a great way to say, "Hey, I want to stay connected. I want to learn more," because you didn't quite get that when you met with them.
Yeah, beautiful. Do you have any stories where a great follow up turned one coffee into a steady stream of referrals?
Yes. There are lawyers who I coach and lawyers who ask for my help because what we are talking about in this episode, the follow up, is such a challenge for so many people. Because a lot of times people will say, Delisi, I don't know how often to follow up. Or Delisi, I don't want to follow up and seem aggressive or salesy or off putting because I'm doing too much follow up. And for whatever reason, that mindset then stops them from the follow up. Another line I've heard is, well, I don't want to follow up and seem desperate. It's not, it's just follow up to create a relationship with someone. And so I have a great example. I had a client last year, and this attorney had met another attorney at a legal conference, and they had a great connection. They exchanged cell phone numbers, and they ended up talking about a case that my client could get referred because the other client couldn't handle it. And I don't want to go into details and break confidentiality, so I'll be intentionally vague. But when my client was talking to me, they said, Delisi, I don't want to follow up too much. I already followed up in an email and to the text message, and I didn't get a response. So I just think maybe if I follow up again, it's going to be too much. And I was like, no, 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 no. Based off everything you told me about that conversation, it sounds like it was a great conversation. You can't not follow up. You have to follow up. So I had them take their cell phone out and I said, you're going to follow up right here on this phone call. We're going to do it right now. We're going to do it together. And sometimes that's how I kind of have to coach somebody. We do it together. So they took their cell phone out and I was like, here's what we're going to put. Hey, Jennifer, just wanted to check in with you one more time on the blank case. I didn't hear back, but I wanted to make sure I didn't drop the ball. And if you still needed my help, I'm available to you. And that was it. That was it. That was the entire text message. No joke. Within an hour of sending that text message, the attorney responded, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for following up. I got so busy on this other case. I'm glad you checked in. Yes, I still need your help on this case. Let me contact the client. I'm going to get this referred over you today." No joke. Within 24 hours, my client had that case signed up from a new referral source they had just met at an event, and it was done. But the key was a follow up. If my client had let their feelings of, oh, it's going to be too much, I'm going to be too aggressive, it's off putting, I don't know if I want to do that. If they had let those feelings seep in more, they wouldn't have signed up that case. And it's not because the other lawyer didn't want to send the case, it's just because they got busy. And that's it. So don't let your fear of being aggressive or following up too much be what holds you back from taking the action and actually following up, because that one more follow up could be the difference between whether or not someone refers you a case.
So much wisdom right there. We started this whole conversation by saying sometimes we don't follow up because we're busy. Well, guess what? Other people are busy too. And
Yes.
so, assuming that you're bothering them is just an assumption. Whereas, in today's digital world and the digital clutter that we all experience, it's the follow up that actually makes the difference in almost every single case.
Absolutely. Follow up, follow up, follow up.
Great. Well, thank you to our audience for listening to today's episode. From coffee to cases, networking doesn't stop when the coffee cup is empty. What you do after is what counts. And if you want help building a referral network that actually generates cases, join Pocket Docket with Delisi Friday. This is a community for lawyers who are serious about referrals and serious about growth. Visit firstcallfriday.com and click on the services page to learn more. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to like, review, and subscribe so you catch the next episode. See you next time. Thank you, Delisi.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. And please share this episode with a peer who can also benefit from case referrals. For more information or to connect with me, Delisi Friday, visit firstcallfriday.com.